All right, let's just step straight into the life of Gerald Fitch. Picture this. Gerald is 43 years old, and he's spent the last 2 decades meticulously constructing what you might call a perfectly adequate life. He lives above a Thai restaurant, which means the smell of lemongrass seeps through his floorboards every single morning at exactly 6:47. He lives with a cat named Principal, an animal that seems to view Gerald's entire existence with, just a mild philosophical tolerance. And his job? Well, Gerald is a senior content developer in the fire safety division at Informex. He literally writes fire safety manuals. I mean, truly, a breathtakingly dull way to spend a Tuesday, right? He's reliable, he's safe, and yet this perfectly adequate life has left him completely, utterly stuck. He's experiencing that quiet, creeping catastrophe of the comfortable plateau.
Now, Gerald's core problem, and this is a running motif throughout our explainer today, is that he is constantly on the verge. But the catch is, he's not on the verge of anything dramatic. It's not a breakdown, it's not a massive breakthrough. He's just on the verge. And being on the verge of something completely unspecific, that is paralyzing. It's exactly like standing in a doorway. You're technically neither in nor out, and honestly, you're just structurally annoying to everyone who needs to get past you. Gerald has been stuck in this doorway for years. He's so used to it that he's actually started to mistake the doorway for the destination itself. He desperately needs a catalyst to just push him through to the other side.
Well, that catalyst actually arrives in the form of a totally unexpected voicemail from a man named Bernard Osei. Bernard invites Gerald down to this little independent bookshop in Bermondsey called the Comma. And Bernard defines the name perfectly. Think about it. A comma is just a pause between one thing and the next. You come in, you pause, and then you go on. It's different to before, but it's ongoing. This brilliant little definition frames the exact transition Gerald so desperately needs in his life. He doesn't need to burn his whole life down. He just needs a pause that allows him to step into whatever comes next. So Bernard asks him to write a catalog for the shop, but not some dry, boring inventory list. He wants a true portrait of what the space actually is.
Okay, let's dive into the space for a second because it really isn't just a retail store. The Coma is an ecosystem, entirely fueled by the people who inhabit it. When Gerald starts hanging around and observing the shop on Saturday mornings, it hits him. If he's going to write about this place, he has to write about its regulars. These aren't just your everyday consumers. They're unique individuals sharing this bustling ecosystem of very specific human attention, where all their quiet little orbits of obsession just sort of intersect.
And looking at these regulars perfectly illustrates how reading is so much more than just some passive hobby. First, you've got Sylvia. She's a 72-year-old forensic connoisseur of crime fiction, complete with these incredibly strict aesthetic objections to lazy writing. Then there's Pete, who is slowly discovering that football writing is actually this vast, complex landscape of class, philosophy, and tragedy. You've got May, who marches in every other week for what can only be described as a highly purposeful 8-minute surgical book extraction. And then, up in the mezzanine, sitting in what is arguably the best chair in London, you have Francis, who's up there translating complex Italian novels. What Gerald begins to realize is that for these people, reading is a highly disciplined act of paying attention. They bring this absolute, razor-sharp focus to the world, something Gerald hasn't done in years.
While Gerald is up in the mezzanine talking to Frances, she points out something really profound about the book she happens to be reading. She says, a novel about paying attention has to itself pay attention. And wow, this literally rewires Gerald's brain. He suddenly realizes he is tasked with paying actual attention to the comma. So he stops sleepwalking through his perfectly adequate life. He starts actively observing things, the specific angles of the bookshelves, the way the morning light hits the skylight, the exact rhythm of how Bernard moves through the space. After all this time, Gerald is finally waking up. And it's this awakened attention that completely shatters his paralysis. It doesn't happen overnight, though. His very first attempt to write the catalog is literally just 4 words. This is a bookshop. He deletes it immediately. I mean, it takes time to break out of 2 decades of rigid corporate writing habits. But as he genuinely engages with the space, the words actually start flowing. Day 1 turns into week 1, and he's got 847 words. By September, he's sitting on 11,000 words. And then by October, it's not even a catalog anymore. It has morphed into a staggering 41,000-word completed manuscript. Just think about that for a second. It's a total transformation from absolute paralysis to a massive, life-altering commitment.
So, let's look at the mechanics of how he actually changed. Back in his day job in the fire safety world, Gerald operates purely on an instruction model, right? Information is transmitted downward from this elevated position of knowing. You just tell people where the exits are. But the bookshop operates on a question model. It doesn't shout instructions at you, it invites discovery. It sets up a space and silently asks you, hey, here is what we think matters. Do you see what we see? What are you looking for? Gerald starts applying this exact question-based philosophy to his writing, and suddenly, his work just comes alive.
This contrast actually hits a really fascinating peak for Gerald during a corporate workshop on ergonomics, because in corporate safety, pain is the catalyst. Think about it. Nobody cares at all about their desk posture until their lower back physically hurts. The whole challenge of his job is trying to make people care before the pain starts. But Gerald realizes the bookshop has already solved this exact problem. The comma uses curiosity as the catalyst, not pain. A truly great bookshop invites you in, sparks your interest, and makes you care deeply about a topic long before you ever realized you needed it in your life.
And that right there is the crucial point, this dynamic between caring and understanding. Bernard shares this deeply profound philosophical insight with Gerald, which is rooted in his love for his late wife, Osei. Bernard explains that conditional caring, where you only care about something once you fully understand all its mechanics, that's totally fine for managing a corporate project or doing your day job. But true commitment? Bernard says, commitment requires the caring to precede the understanding. You have to take the leap. You have to care fiercely about something, whether it's a person, a creative project, or a quirky little bookshop, long before you have all the answers figured out.
Now, Osei was a public health researcher, which meant she dealt with messy, incomplete data her entire life. She actually coined a phrase that becomes Gerald's ultimate guiding light: tentatively true. And why this matters so much to you and me is that life rarely, if ever, gives us perfect clarity. Sometimes we just have to sit with the uncertainty, stake our claim on what feels tentatively true right now, and then just be willing to revisit it as we grow. Gerald doesn't know where his book is going. He doesn't fully understand his growing feelings for Frances. He isn't entirely sure of his own future, but he accepts what is tentatively true in the moment, and he keeps writing anyway.
Gerald actually manages to capture this exact ethos by looking at one of Bernard's handwritten recommendation cards for a book. The card just says, "This will make you feel less alone." Not in a comforting way, in a true way. I mean, wow, that completely anchors the emotional difference between cheap comfort and deep truth. Cheap comfort is when someone just pats you on the back and tells you everything is fine. But deep truth acknowledges the complexity and the absolute difficulty of the world, but it reassures you that someone else has walked through this exact territory before you, and that is exactly what the comma provides to its regulars.
But, as always seems to happen, just as we figure things out, reality crashes the party. The ultimate catalyst arrives. The building that houses the comma has been sold to a massive commercial property company. The lease is ending, the rent is going to absolutely skyrocket, and the physical bookshop is about to be wiped off the map. For Gerald, that doorway he's been standing in for years, it's closing. He has to finally step fully through it.
So, Gerald hands over his finished manuscript to Bernard. Now, he knows a stack of paper isn't going to stop a multi-million-dollar corporate property developer. But as they both realize in this powerfully quiet, shared moment, if the book exists, it would mean it was real. Gerald's massive 41,000-word commitment immortalizes the comma. He has finally created something that exists independently of himself. He captured the angled shelves, the quirky regulars, the handwritten cards, the morning light hitting the mezzanine. Even if the physical bricks and mortar change, the book is proof that this specific, beautiful magic actually happened.
Ultimately, Bernard's entire mission with the shop, and Gerald's entire journey of self-discovery, revolves around a single, beautiful question. How do you reach a person who doesn't yet know they're looking for the thing you have? Bernard does it every day by placing the absolute perfect book into a browser's hands. Gerald does it by writing a manuscript that captures a feeling he didn't even know he needed until he felt it. It's really all about naming a feeling that just hasn't found its words yet.
Which leaves us with this final, vital thought to chew on. Gerald escaped his perfectly adequate, terribly stuck life not by drafting some rigid 10-year master plan, but by following a quiet, tentative curiosity into a little bookshop. He finally allowed himself to care before he fully understood. So what about you? Where's the doorway you've been standing in, maybe a bit too comfortable to leave, but way too restless to stay? What do you care about before you fully understand it? I want you to find that thing. Embrace what is tentatively true for you right now and step boldly through the doorway. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep paying attention.